A new government is in place and is already working in the Bahamas after the Progressive Liberal Party grabbed 32 of the 39 seats contested in last Thursday's election. When I spoke with him last, the chairman of the PLP, Fred Mitchell, was, the party chairman, but he was without a seat in the nation's parliament. Today, I speak to him in his capacity as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Public Service, and a man whose party has been given the responsibility to take charge of Bahamians' affairs for the next electoral cycle. We'll talk Bahamas politics and the way forward from here with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Public Service in the Bahamas, Fred Mitchell. Minister, good to see you. Congratulations. It's been, well, they say a week is a long time in politics. Last week you were hopeful. Now you are supposed to be busy working and laying plans for the next 4 or 5 years.
Well, yes, and I have to beg an excuse from the Prime Minister to finish this program because we're supposed to have a cabinet meeting at 2. But this is important, I think, to let people know what the state of affairs is. And I'm really grateful. I think the party is grateful to all of our supporters and friends and people of goodwill for the election result last week.
I say this to you that an activist, the former senator you know very well, John Bostwick, said, look, this is not a real mandate. The voter turnout was way lower than average, at about 65%. And the PLP is not really the choice of the people. So it's not as if they did anything magical or they connected with the masses, which has caused them to be in this position of power. Your reaction to that?
Well, I'm sure he has to say that. It makes him feel good. That's fine. But in our system, which is first past the post, the people who get first past the post of those who turn out to vote, they're the government. And as I said when I was on your program last week, when we lost, I disagreed with your the way you described the result in 2017. People in our region tend to see these election cycles as somehow messianic. They're not. They're really just management decisions. And the people have decided in the Bahamas that they want us to manage their affairs for the next 5 years. And that's the law, that's the Constitution, that's our system. So if it makes Mr. Bostwick feel good, good for him. As Michael Manley used to say, cool breeze. But the fact is, we're the government.
If I use, Minister, the reaction of Abaconians to the election result as perhaps representative of what those Bahamians who voted for change are saying, I would say to you that Abaco, which of course now has 2 PLP MPs, the FNM, no representation on the island for the first time in a long time, where they had almost a carte blanche in terms of leadership over the people in that island for so many years. Abaconians have said, look, we turned to the PLP in this time because of how badly the FNM dealt with the Dorian recovery and how promises to us, and not even promises, we're citizens, we lost everything. The way aid, which was supposed to come to us, didn't come, and we are now turning to the PLP to get us up and running. Would you say that it is fair to see that kind of feeling from Abaconians as perhaps reflective of the overall feeling of Bahamians for them to have made the decision they made on September 16?
I think so. Certainly what you describe in Abaco is correct. Bit surprised about East Grand Bahama because basically there was no reason for them to support for the same reasons that Abaconians did. But that what is important, though, is that we as a political party should not misread the result. As I said, it's not messianic. We've been given a job, and that job is to bring some order, some better management to the way the nation's affairs are conducted. And I think that's what we see. We see we have to continue to connect with people on that level. It's management, it's good governance, it's being open, it's being truly transparent. And that's the message, and that's our mantra.
So for those looking for deliverance from the PLP, Minister, is it that, if we stick with Abaco and the example of Dorian, is it that there were resources to help them and that these resources were trapped elsewhere in a bottleneck by virtue of bad management? Or was it that resources needed to have been husbanded in a kind of way where there are limited resources, but they needed to have been specifically dedicated to the Abaconians for it to reach them? What's the situation? Why it didn't reach them? How does the PLP cure all of that?
Well, one of the things is we have to investigate what happened, because the prevailing, and I say rumor in quotes, was that aid did in fact come. It just didn't get to the people who were supposed to get it. So it got siphoned off or disappeared somewhere where we don't know, and we don't know why. In a couple of cases, people reported that the stuff is still in a warehouse somewhere. In other cases, it said that some people who should not have gotten it have gotten it. And I think there needs to be an investigation about that. But I don't want us to spend too much time and energy on investigating. We have to solve the problems of Abaco and the delivery of the aid. And so our commitment is to try and do that with all the resources we can employ.
Early days in the life of this new administration, Minister, but already, if I stick with Abaco again, I'm going to leave that theme shortly. I read a report where one resident said, and of course, this is not something new, but she said, look, we feel as if the issue of immigration has not been taken seriously where Abaco is concerned. And she said that it is that immigrants outnumber Abaconians 15-1 on the islands. And you said, look, it's a massive problem. The government has to fix it. Is this a fix the PLP will busy itself with?
It's a very difficult problem, and it is one of the issues that we will have to deal with. There is a huge concern in Abaco and throughout the Bahamas that the country is being overwhelmed by irregular migration from the south of us, from the Republic of Haiti. At the same time, I would guess about a third of the voters, the voting rolls in the Bahamas, are people of Haitian descent. And so therefore, the issue has to be managed very carefully. What is clear is that there's a consensus in the society that we cannot be overrun by irregular migration, and that we have to put our resources behind stopping it, and also that we have to regularize those who have a legal right in the Bahamas or claim to some form of residence, status, or citizenship. Those things are finely balanced. I think Abaco is an example of people getting so exasperated about it that there's a revolt against the current administration, who promised that they would resolve this. But, it's easy to talk in opposition. I've been an immigration minister, so there's no learning curve for me or no learning curve for our government. And I think that these processing issues will be dealt with adequately, and we will do what is necessary on the law enforcement end to be sure that irregular migration is kept to a minimum.
Yeah, it was with some surprise, I note, Minister, when I saw the Prime Minister's tour of the Princess Margaret Hospital, and of course him describing it as dismal overall conditions there. We all know about the stalled construction and the various issues which may have caused the stalling of the pace of construction. But when I note beyond the physical condition of the hospitals, over 300 bodies in morgues in the Bahamas, of course the COVID deaths, and how the Princess Margaret situation and the situation at the morgue are symptomatic of a healthcare system, Minister, that is itself in need of life support. I have to ask, where does this rank or where does this fall on the totem of important things the PLP will have to get done and address very early in the life of this administration to give confidence to the people and to pay back the investment of faith that has been made by the voters?
Number one is the pandemic. Number two is the economy, and they're probably twinned or tied together at the hip. The economy can't get off the ground if this pandemic issue is not resolved. The Prime Minister has spent, since the administration came in, trying to talk to the Americans, talk to our partners, other partners overseas, about how we can get assistance to ramp up what's in the hospital, improve the situation with regard to personnel, improve the vaccine supply, because we are seriously concerned that the vaccine supply is in jeopardy if we do not get more resources put or more vaccines flown in. We just had a meeting with the Americans this morning to see what they can do to help with those issues. So I would say the pandemic is really job number one. And the hospital is a prime example of the management issue. We tried to bring into being national health insurance. And as part of that, before we lost office in 2017, we started ramping up the construction of mini hospitals and clinics in the Family Islands to relieve the pressure on the hospital in Nassau. That was scrapped by our predecessors, immediate predecessors. And one of the results you see today is now that this crisis has hit, we have a shortage of beds, we have a shortage of equipment, we have a shortage of personnel. And it really is as a result of the short-sightedness of the previous administration in opposing the work on national health insurance. So going forward, as I say, the pandemic is number one, the economy is number two, but they're probably twinned at the hip.
Yeah, the last time we spoke, we went through some of the numbers where the economic fallout was concerned. I was reading a paper of, well, a report rather, of a conference held at the Arthur Lockjack Institute of the University of the West Indies, where Marla Lucaran, the Trinidadian economist, made an observation that the Bahamas, Minister, stands poised to join those Caribbean countries who would default on their sovereign debts. She noted that, of course, since 2019, going back to Dorian, there was a $3.4 billion hole in the Bahamian finances. And of course, that situation would have been exacerbated by the fallout from COVID. So I say all that to say that externally, looking from outside in, the picture doesn't look rosy at all. You've just gotten control of the books. Are you seeing a scenario where a debt default is on the cards, Minister?
Learn to take with a grain of salt what economists predict. I think the particular individual has made some doom and gloom predictions before about the Bahamas. And certainly from that perspective, that may be what she sees. Governments, though, are hired to solve problems. My view is that when we have to take a cold, hard look at what the facts are, that's being done now. The person who's leading this fight, of course, is Simon Wilson, who's the financial secretary. He's very competent. He's well known throughout the region, well known in the international financial institutions. And I'm confident that at the end of the day, we can avoid any predicted default on debt. I think that's a worst case scenario. Having said that, the situation is quite serious. I admit that. But I think that when you look at the actual metrics, it is possible to climb out of this. And I hope that our minister, who is the prime minister, will have a conversation with some of the officials, public officials in Jamaica, about what their experience is with this, because that experience can inform us as to how to deal with what presents us right now.
Are we to take any cues, Minister, from the fact that despite naming a cabinet, a substantial cabinet, we'll come to that in a second, that the Honourable Prime Minister has yet to name a finance minister? Should that be a clue that he will take on that very, very, very difficult job in these most challenging times?
Yes, well, let me describe what has happened. He is the Minister of Finance, but there's a Minister of Economic Affairs who's in the Senate. Unfortunately, under our Constitution, you have to be in the House to be Minister of Finance. But the de facto, day-to-day running of the Ministry of Finance will be in the capable hands of Michael Howkitis, who will be the government leader in the Senate. And Mike has worked there in the Ministry of Finance before, so he knows where everything is. There's no learning curve. And I think he'll get up to speed quite quickly. It's unfortunate that he lost the attempt to get elected to the House again, but I think we will have his services in full as the government leader in the Senate and the Minister of Economic Affairs. So the Prime Minister is, in fact, the Minister of Finance. That should also give comfort to some people that the finance and the economy, they have the highest priority with the government.
All right, hold it right there for us, Minister. We just have one more segment with you, and then we'll allow you to take care of government business. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Public Service in the Bahamas, Fred Mitchell, they're telling you some truths, youngsters. You can't be a Minister of Finance in this or in jurisdictions like his and ours here in Jamaica. You have to be a member of the House of Representatives. You can't have a senator who is a finance minister, and that's one for you to note for your lessons as you go forward. The final segment with the Minister Fred Mitchell after this break.